Hi, everybody. Welcome to Gen 102 Digital Literacy. I wanted to provide a brief lecture on really this week's lesson, rather. My name is Dr. Jason Mack. I've introduced myself a little bit already to some of you in the discussion boards. I've also introduced myself to you over like a video, other recording, or rather video introduction. But let's walk through a couple different things here. Just some highlights, just based on our first chapter, just to make things clearer, provide more context, etc., and hopefully help you all have really great discussion boards. So hopefully you can see that. I think you can see my screen. Should be able to, from what I can tell. And let's go like this. And like this. Hopefully this works. Okay. So let's talk about a couple things. Feel free to pause me, etc. First of all, a Socratic question, just kind of because Socrates asked a lot of questions, sort of our format here. We live our lives online. How much do we live our lives online? How much is healthy? How much is not? And you might also think about how ordering is at our fingertips, Amazon, online shopping, etc. Something kind of interesting in terms of just group behavior with people is that Amazon actually tracks previous order history from previous customers, and then they stock the warehouse accordingly. So when you get up early in the morning and it's about 6 or 7 a.m., you order something on Amazon you want, and you select 2-day shipping. You go to work, you come home, and you practically trip over the package. It's because they were expecting that somebody somewhere in your geographic area wanted that thing. But as we build our definition of digital fluency, which is related to digital literacy, but definitely different, I'll walk through a bit of that nuance today. We can really have quite a bit of power in the online realm if we use it the right way. Now, we need to be careful because we have the illusion of choice. You have privacy, cookies, and internet searches, rather. Privacy, cookies, and internet searches. So my anecdotal example is I had to delete Facebook off my phone because information's tracked. Whatever you put on the internet is pretty much there forever. So I used to be on, not have my phone on, just have Facebook on there. And I would have private conversations with my friends, my family, etc. And then the next time I went on the internet on my phone, I would get pop-up advertisements for whatever I had spoke about privately, and it went away when I deleted Facebook. Now, social media absolutely has a place, and it's very important. However, there's so much information that's constantly just coming at you all the time. It's important, I think, to step back and have a sense of balance and then make really good decisions on how we use the internet. And we'll walk through more of that over the course of this class. So let's talk about digital fluency. That provides us with an intentional process that helps us inform our choices and our interactions within our digital landscape. We need to becoming digitally fluent. We want to understand how to go about it the right way. How do we understand digital fluency, as well as the consequences of our activity? You want to be a good digital citizen. You want to make sure to, when you're posting, post stuff that's not incendiary, etc. You also want to have a sense of where your information comes from. So let's walk through that a little bit more. So part of it is the art of attention, identifying what distractions you might have, developing a focus. Now, sometimes you cannot get rid of every distraction. That's simply just not possible. The art of paying attention versus not paying attention. Now, there's bias competition. That's just sort of all that information coming at you. Like, what should you choose? Do you check your phone when you're doing homework? Turning off phones is certainly, I think, very healthy. If you've ever gone out to a social engagement with some friends, family, someone you care about, and take your phone with you, of course, because it's convenient. but maybe leave it in the car because you'll probably engage better with that person having your phone not with you. It's amazing what we have with access to the internet, access to everything. It's amazing that you can fully take your coursework online. And if you're interested, by the way, it was the second President Bush that actually it into law. Historically, and there are other countries in the world where you cannot get your degree online 100%. It was 51% on ground, 49% online. It was allowed to be 100% online from the second President Bush. I'm not getting into politics here. I'm just talking about who historically is responsible for the convenience the way you're all studying right now. So we want to think about developing a digital strategy, long-term versus personal and professional goals. Now, when you think about that, you might say, well, that's in the book. I read that. What does that really mean? Or maybe you've prepared quite a bit. You've read through the book. You have a sense of what this is. So Carl Rogers talked about something, real self versus future self. And that absolutely applies to long-term personal and professional goals. There is no time like the present. You have to start somewhere. And I'll give you an example, a very kind of basic example of real self versus future self. A couple winters ago, I was living in the Midwest at the time. Not really my thing now, living in a nice warm area of the country. But at the time, I needed to get snow tires, or not really snow tires, but just better tires on my car, sort of those all season weather tires. And my tires were getting down there and I needed them, but I did not want to face a winter without new tires. So real self, crummy tires on the car, future self, awesome tires on the car and traction and not careening into things. So in terms of budgeting, about 2 months before the first snowfall, got tires. About a month later, no, actually, probably about a month before the first snowfall. And then just before, in fact, the day before, I got the other 2 tires for the 4 tires. And that was my real self planning for my future self. Well, the very next day, it snowed and I walked outside and I had traction on my car. Now, if we don't plan and set goals, those that fail to plan usually fail. Those that have a plan usually succeed. You don't have a chance to collide with your future self. You're getting your degree. Many of you are working professionals, and you need the flexibility to be able to get your degree, move up, get your career, your future job, your future dream job, whatever that looks like. So every single day, minute by minute, whatever we do, what is your goal and what am I doing to support that goal? Now, something you can do in terms of trying to drown out that noise and all those distractions are you can have incentive-based academic goals. For example, you might like playing Fortnite. You might like playing Sims or any sort of digital gaming system. You might like surfing the internet, online shopping, or just spending time with your friends and family. Now, the best way to be successful is to start with homework and then incentivize it later. I'm going to spend 30 minutes of mindless internet surfing after I spend an hour on my homework. So you can sort of incentivize it and you'll enjoy it more. You won't feel guilty. That prevents the ugly monster of procrastination. So through a deeper understanding of the dynamics of digital media and digital spaces, we can put the rich network of digital tools and technology to work for us, do what we want, and clearly define ourselves and our roles as digital citizens. So if we're going to define ourselves as digital citizens, we need to think about our own digital ethics. So let's talk about the nuances. Digital literacy is understanding certain tools. Digital fluency is a little bit more about how to use them effectively. So let's walk through the 3 components of digital fluency to really break that down more for y'all. So a couple things. We have digital or technical proficiency. That's your ability to understand, select, and use the technologies and technological systems. Then we have digital literacy. That's cognitive or intellectual competencies, which include being able to read, create, evaluate, make judgments, and apply technical skills while doing so. Then you have social competence or dispositional knowledge, the ability to relate to others and communicate with them effectively. It's very important to know how to play nice with others because guess what? You can't get that awesome job if you have a 4.0 GPA and you don't have social skills. Very, very important social competence, knowing the social rules, and digitally, because there's things you do and do not want to do digitally to support the community and have it be a positive environment. Let's walk through that some more. So, some questions to understand your own digital fluency. What are we actually doing, or what are you actually doing during all the time we spend using digital tools and technology? You might want to think about that further, like, is it effective? Am I using my time wisely? And more importantly, what are we trying to do? Now, we have things like Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Snapchat. And I mentioned branding examples because if you want to think about what your digital presence is, it's important to think about what choices you make digitally on a day to day, week to week, month to month basis, and how does that market your brand and get people to know who you are, and how does that help your job, your future job, your technical expertise and competence, your industry knowledge, your business knowledge of what the competition's doing. Those are all super, super important things to give you credibility, and it can be done through social media besides what you're doing here with your education. So if you're going to post, think about what you're posting. Is it helpful? Is it reactionary? Is it proactive? Is there a high level of emotional IQ when you're posting? All important things. If you're trying to show that you're someone who has content expertise, you might try to post and show that content expertise about something that you've researched or that you know about so that people can see that expertise. I think on the professional side, LinkedIn's a really great place to start, which is a professional networking website if you're not familiar. What is digital fluency? The ability to use digital technologies competency, respectfully, safely, and confidently in order to successfully learn, work, and play in the digital world. The digital world is very much here to stay. We want to know how to be successful in it. Some more vocabulary, some more vernacular. And yes, the transitions are my own. Technical proficiency means knowing what digital tools are and how they function, kind of like what words mean and what they mean in another language. Digital literacy, which is not digital fluency, means knowing how to use digital tools to create content and how to select the right tools to complete a task. Similar to knowing how to put words into another language together to create meaning. Digital fluency means being able to intuitively select and adaptively use digital technologies to communicate and perform tasks, similar to being able to speak your native language or becoming fluent in another language. You don't have to think about speaking or translating your native language before speaking in another language. So really just sort of like, almost like intuitively, like, okay, I'm going to do this. It makes sense. I'm not thinking through every step. It's kind of intuition, my gut, but that only works if you're properly trained well in both your digital literacy and your technical proficiency with which complement your digital fluency in a really great way, because that's knowing what they are, how they function, how to use them, and digital fluency is sort of like putting that all together to break that down more. So some things to pause and reflect. And when I say pause and reflect, absolutely take a few moments to consider some of these questions. Can you recall a time when you had to explain a technology or device work to someone who never interacted with it before? How did you approach your explanation? Well, it happened to me. I had explained to one of my parents that the picture that I took on my phone of the settings and where to click was a non-clickable image. But that my parents been on the planet a lot longer, and that's probably newer information for them versus maybe some of that was a little bit younger. But everybody, all ages, it's very important to have good digital fluency. Can you recall needing to be taught how to use a certain technology? How long did it take before you felt proficient in that technology? And could you teach someone how to use it now? Now, any of you that can remember when we didn't have cell phones or the internet, that might be an example of that experience and that question. We also need to have social competence. That is possessing the ability to relate to others and communicate with them effectively in digital platforms. How you communicate. Netiquette, also in terms of proper things that you would post that would make sense. And I have some information on netiquette actually in my bio if you want to break that down more, but it has to do with like in a social media forum. You don't want to bully, you don't want to do any flaming, you don't want to do anything that's like really like I said, combative. You absolutely everything you put out there that you type is like I mentioned earlier, it's there forever. Face work, you want to say face, for example. Now think about this digitally in terms of calling somebody out because it's important in terms of having being a good digital citizen, which is sort of where we conclude and we'll walk through between now week 1 and week 5. I had a boss whose native language was not English, and she was encouraging us to build rapport. Yes, everybody, I said it wrong. That was intentional. We had several meetings about the importance of rapport. I pulled her aside because you criticize someone in private, you praise them in public in terms of just good social competence, whether we're talking about it being digital or just in the social environment. But I feel because of the pandemic, everything these days very much is digital. I told her, hey, you wouldn't know this, but the T is silent. Please say rapport. You'll sound better as the leader. She was very gracious that I told her. Now, I didn't tell her in front of the other people she supervised, including me. I could have, but it would have been very inappropriate because it would have been dishonoring her face in terms of face work or saving face, the expression. It's the same thing in the digital community. You want to think about every choice you make because once it's typed, or once it's on a computer, or once it's a video, or it's sent out, or it's on Snapchat, it's there forever. So we want to build a positive community. We want to support each other. Um, Word choice, very important. Words are so powerful. You can do so much with words. The wrong word choice can completely change the meaning. And then obviously, always diversity and inclusion. Always want to include everybody in the group, no matter where you're from. We always want to have diversity and inclusion. And you want to be very careful not to get into anything like, say, a positive stereotype, because that causes a lack of diversity and inclusion. So if you think a group's better at something, that's not good either, because that reinforces a lack of diversity and inclusion. Um, Obviously, negative stereotypes are saying the group's worse at something. Positive stereotypes are absolutely systemic and cause a problem with diversity and inclusion. So, no stereotypes. Accept people for who they are, their personalities. That's what makes us all who we are, regardless of our background. We're all human beings. We're all people. So, the need for digital fluency. This is just a graph from a book, really about internet use. You can see that we're pretty much a lot of us are on the internet kind of all the time. And by the way, just kind of a heads up, everybody, don't text and drive because your chance of getting into an accident is about 8 times likely. It is literally the psychological equivalent of drinking like 4 beers and then getting behind the wheel of a car like immediately. So I think it's very important that we have technology at our fingertips, but absolutely do not be texting and driving. It's so dangerous. And by the way, if you're on your phone while you drive, you are 50% more likely to get into an accident, just in terms of a statistic. And if you're on Bluetooth, which is supposed to be helpful, it's about 40% because there's a cognitive spike when you use technology in that's disruptive when you use technology in the car. So be very careful. Your car should not be a rolling phone booth. You should be very careful of how you use digital technology in the car so that you don't get into an accident. It's better to just enjoy driving. That text, that phone call can wait. Now, what sort of digital impact has technology made on all of us? Well, COVID, a lot of jobs were They became remote. Remote working, interestingly enough, a lot of times remote working is more productive. Education and health services, you're all getting your degree online. Teledoc, where you remote or FaceTime or have a Zoom meeting with a doctor. Interpersonal relationships and social interactions, probably good and bad because you don't have that face to face interaction as much because of digital technology's daily impact. We have to be very careful because when you get those likes and such on Facebook, Snapchat, Twitter, etc., what ends up happening is you get a little release of dopamine in your brain because you're enjoying that, and then we become dopamine addicted to our phones. I think it's very important to think about a balance of not only how we engage with our own digital fluency and using that to correctly engage with technology, but also not being so overstimulated that we're just always on a screen. That don't feel that psychologically healthy either. Um, Politics and influence of the internet. It's much easier for people to post an opinion that may or may not be backed in facts and science. You should always question and consider the source so that you don't get riled up, and that if you are going to get riled up or get behind something in terms of a political or social movement, you have the facts in front of you to make that right decision, not just sort of blindly believing what's on the internet. So, some questions to ask yourself and reflect on this week as you're going through the assignments would be: how has your use of internet shifted since the pandemic? Consider the source. Now, this is important in terms of being a good digital citizen. Don't just forward something because you read it and it sounded interesting. See who wrote it. Are they an expert in their field? What's their purpose? Are they trying to sell something? You look at things like that before you just forward it, because you don't want to get caught up in just sort of being a bad digital citizen either. There's social engineering, spam attacks where they will try to get your information. You want to be very careful because everybody's social is created. The first five numbers are based on where you were born and your birth date. The last four are random. That information can certainly be posted. You can certainly post that on your social media. There is software out there that can harvest that sort of thing and then try to get your information. So be careful how much you share. Don't overshare as a digital citizen, or really even situationally either, in terms of just that social competence. But also just be careful of what information you put out there about yourself so that you don't end up with social engineering or spam attacks. Like I mentioned earlier, balance over stimulation. Anecdotal example, like I said, when I go out, hang out with friends, family, loved ones, etc., when we leave the phones in the car, so we're not texting other people the entire time, it's a better event or experience. Now, I'm not saying leave it at home. If you get stranded, you want to have your phone. So as we think about this balance, let's do some pausing and reflecting. How often do you turn to social media for a break? How often do you use a digital tool to quickly work towards a solution or on a task at work? What digital platforms have you used at your workplace or your current or previous workplace? How have you successfully incorporated digital tools to communicate with your workplace colleagues? You want to be a critical consumer of information. So, the question to ask yourself is, how can you have a sense of the information you consume on digital media? How can you know that? How can you really know that what the sense of what you're consuming for digital media is correct? What is your protocol? How do you sift through it? So there's a lot of stuff that gets posted. Like I said, it's important to think about, where did the information come from? Is it based in facts? Is it something that just somebody made up? And by the way, Wikipedia, not a good place to start. I'll tell you why. Did a small little social experiment, not very scientific, years ago. I decided to say to people in terms of social media that plaid meant better than awesome. And I posted on Wikipedia and hit save. Then I went to work and told people about it. 6 months later, someone in another part of the country, a friend, told me that was a social expression. No, I made it up. Wikipedia has a lot of editors, but you want primary, secondary sources. You really want to make sure that what you have is correct information. So more vocabulary, lifelong learning, very important. I do lifelong learning. What are you doing to constantly increase your skill set, your knowledge, skills, and abilities, or what are sometimes called KSAs? And that means after you graduate here, you take another course online, or you go on to a master's degree, or you learn something new. To have good digital fluency and digital literacy, which is linked to digital fluency along with your technical expertise, you need to immerse yourself in the right use of the technology tools and learn the new stuff as it comes about so that you can continue to have good digital fluency, because that's really all about putting that all together. Socratic question: what are your KSAs, or your knowledge, skills, and abilities? All of you are getting your degree for some career trajectory, prestige, a reason, intrinsically or extrinsically. That's where you're at. Either outside factors, support from your family, better money, opportunity to make better money, etc. Maybe some of you have been told you'll get promoted at work. Maybe some of you are using the likelihood, because it's very statistically likely that you'll do well with a degree in hand. Of course, there is no guarantee on this, but generally that works out. What are your real superpowers? You're like, why is he asking me about, why the heck is Dr. Mack asking me about superpowers? But you probably have one. Maybe you're really good at managing people. Maybe you're very good at breaking things down. Maybe you're really good at being a quick study and learning a new skill or task at work. Maybe you're really good at the gift of gab and rapport building. What are your superpowers? What are your KSAs? Whatever they are, you should be increasing them with lifelong learning. If you have a KSA that you're really good at, you should still study it more to get better at it. Because there's always someone better, and you always want to be increasing your skill set, your knowledge, your skills, and abilities. Then you have self-direction, the ability to personally identify and voluntarily participate in opportunities to learn and skill build. So let's talk about growth mindset versus fixed mindset. Growth mindset says you can change things. Fixed mindset says you cannot. Now, I'll be vulnerable here. I'll share my own personal example. Years ago, when I was getting my degree, my bachelor's degree, before I was ever a professor, I got really crummy grades. In fact, they were so bad that not only did I get academically suspended from the university, I got academically disqualified. I got a letter in the mail from the four-year school I attended to come back to the school later when I could take my academics seriously. Now, a fixed mindset would be sort of locking that in, thinking that because I did poorly, I would always do poorly. Not necessarily true. Fixed mindset could also be thinking you did well or doing well and thinking you'll always do well. Growth mindset is realizing the past does not affect the future. It has to do with your motivation and how you believe and your faith in yourself and your stick-to-itiveness and your grit to move from a fixed mindset into a growth mindset, because I went all the way with my education. And I'm using that as an anecdotal example to explain to you all, you wouldn't think if you looked at my undergraduate transcripts that I ever would have even gone to grad school. But growth mindset, getting motivated, changing the behavior, doing things differently, using the right digital tools, having the right digital fluency, having the right digital literacy makes a huge difference. So digital literacy versus digital fluency. Moving from digital literacy to digital fluency requires an effective application of critical thinking. So you want to really be self-evaluating, thinking through things, asking those Socratic questions. Well, it is important to understand the function and purpose of a specific digital technologies, software, or platforms. We must go further if we wish to achieve digital fluency. It takes research, critical thinking, and application of knowledge you gain from experience to become digitally fluent. Practicing the elements of critical thinking outlined above will help you make more informed and intuitive decisions about how and when and why to use certain digital technologies to achieve your goals in your academic, professional, or personal life. Another crucial aspect of going from being digitally literate to being digitally fluent is taking a self-directed approach to thinking about technology. evaluating needs, and creatively applying our own approach to effectively accomplish our goals. So we have some vocabulary here. Resourcefulness. How quickly can you solve problems quickly and creatively? For example, I was working on something the other day and I could not get the file to upload, but I remembered back in terms of resourcefulness that if you cut and paste from Word into Notes, it gets rid of the code behind it, which made the data, the information in the file smaller in terms of a digital tool, and then cut and paste it from Notes back into Word. It gets rid of all sort of like the garbage behind it, making the file too big, and then I was able to upload it. Some key components for communication. Know your audience. Who are you talking to? How are you connecting to them? How are you connecting yourself to them? If you're going in for an interview and you can find the LinkedIn profile of somebody that's going to interview you, that you have their name, you can go in and you can look at their job experience. If at any point in their past they have similar job experience as you or lived in the same area of the country, you can weave that into your interview by knowing your audience and stack the odds in your favor to get the job. Know how they communicate with each other and you, component of communication. Know how likely they are to respond. So let's pause and reflect. What goals do you have to become more of an expert at digital tools and skills for your future? Which of the career readiness skills do you already practice in your academic, personal, and or professional life? That's from the reading. Which do you not currently use but plan to incorporate? I should probably get better at Excel, for example, in terms of just sort of like my own answers here. And then sort of just lastly here, just to walk through things just a little bit more and conclude. And when I say a Socratic question, it's not necessarily an easy answer. What practices can you engage in to increase your own digital fluency? And of course, these are our references here in terms of the book. And we'll stop our share and end our show here, our slideshow that is. I hope that was helpful. Hope I had an opportunity to break some more stuff down for you. I hope that's helpful with your assignments this week. I'll sign off now. Hope to see you all on the discussion boards, grade book, etc. And look forward to meeting all of you this week in the discussion boards. Take care, and I will see you in the classroom.